Well, I'm still new with YouTube Live, so sorry my video cut out. But anyway, so my family is in Point Pelee, Ontario, Canada, and this was in the from circa 1820 to 1860. And my uh, and like I said, my great great aunt Esther, that would be my great 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 grandfather's daughter, one of his daughters, huge family. Her cabin is fully restored and it's part of Canada's national park. Point Pelee is now a national park. And so we've been down and we'd had our pictures taken. I think that's where I left off on before my video cut out. So then my great great, so my William Abbott's son, my great great grandfather Aaron Abbott, and brothers were working for a land developer by the name of Giles Slocum. And they were building docks and piers in that Ontario area, Detroit, Windsor area. And Giles Slocum bought property in eastern Muskegon County. And he was a land developer. And so my great-great-grandfather, Aaron Abbott, and his brother, Dave Abbott, those two for sure, moved out to West Michigan to eastern Muskegon County. And of course, today, if you come off from Apple Avenue, M46, and you go south, there's Slocum Road that's named after Giles Slocum. And in fact, I don't see, this is where I don't know the history of Ravenna, the city itself, the town itself proper. But if you go north out of Ravenna on Slocum Road, heading toward Apple Avenue, I think you just go a couple miles, you get to Laketon Avenue, which runs east and west. If you hang a right or go east on Laketon down to, never remember the name of that street, it'll come to me. The first street that runs north and south, Squires Road. Take that and you'll see an area, there's like 4 streets, run some east, west, north, south, and that was called Slocum's Grove, and that's where Giles Slocum put in some streets, and they named them after his family members, daughters and sons and wife. And there was a hotel there that my great uncle Dave Abbott helped manage the hotel. And Slocum's Grove was a thriving community. If you look at census records, show that like from 1860, I don't remember how many there were in 1860, but by the time it was, and these people were following the logging industry. And so because Slocum had a mill, a lumber mill there where Laketon and Squires comes together, right in that area. I've actually walked through that area, looked around. And it's in that area. I don't know the precise location. Someone else might, but I don't. But I know it was right in that area. So, and the Abbotts had an Abbott mill over on off from Slocum Road, just south of Laketon, and on the west side of Slocum Road. My great-great-grandfather, one time he had quite a bit of property. I think census records showed like one time like he had like 1,000 acres, but by the early 1900s, Slocum's Grove was dwindling. I'm sorry, they got to a popular, it was like they got up to several hundred people, like I want to say 600 people between 1860 and like 1900. And then after that, the logging industry just kind of died out there, and the population went way down. Could be too that Ravenna was being organized as a community in the late 1800s, and maybe people were moving or whatever. But anyway, my great-great-grandfather had I have a plat map of early 1900s, and it shows that he had a section there south of Laketon, west of Slocum Road, and south of Apple Avenue, west of Slocum Road, and north of Laketon. He had about 80 acres there on the plat map. So anyway, there was an Abbott mill, and then there was the Slocum's Grove and the Slocum mill. And my great-great-uncle Dave Abbott ran this hotel, hundreds of people, thriving community between 1860 and the early 1900s. Then as you approach the 1910, like 1912, 1915, right in that area, the logging, people started moving out of the area. My great-great-grandfather retired. He actually moved over to Muskegon, and where he died in 1919 at the age of 90, 89 and 6 months, I think he was. And his son my great-great-grandfather's son George had died at a young age of typhoid fever. My grandfather then was raised by my great-great-grandfather. Aaron Abbott, my great-great-grandfather, raised my grandfather, whose name was Aaron Abbott, Aaron James Abbott. And Aaron James Abbott, who was born in 1875, he then took his wife and beginning his family, which was my dad and my uncles, and they moved from Slocum's Grove to Broman, Michigan, north of White Cloud, Michigan. And he had a cabin there. And in fact, in the 1960s, when I was a young boy, my dad took me there, and I saw it, but I have no recollection. I was so long ago, and I was not in the family history as a 9-year-old. So I didn't even think to ask questions. I just, oh, okay, it's cool. But and then my uncle got sick, my grandfather Aaron got sick, and he left his wife and 5 boys in Broman, and he came back to Ravenna and lived with his sister Addie. She was born Addie Abbott, but she married Bert Spencer, and they adopted a son named Byron Spencer. They never had any children themselves. Well, my grandfather moved back with Addie and Bert, and he died within 6 months of living with them. And cirrhosis of the liver, I believe, is what it was. And so my grandmother, she, in an attempt to come back to the Ravenna area, because that was like home, that's where our family landed. But from what I understand, she found affordable housing in Grant, Michigan, which is between Newaygo and Ravenna. And so she just went to Grant, and she got a job with this is now probably the late 1920s to probably mid 1920s to 1930s. She got a job with the Fremont Canning Company, which later became Gerber, and she moved a little bit to Newaygo in the mid 30s. That's why my uncles graduated from Grant High School, but my dad and his brother, my youngest brother George, they graduated from Newaygo High School, and that's how the Abbotts got into Newaygo County. And so there you go. So that's the family history, and that's why Ravenna is kind of special to me. A friend that I met in Ravenna who is Mike Pearson. Mike, if you're watching this, thank you for your friendship. He had me speak at a recent Memorial Day event for the American Legion there in Ravenna. And he asked me, before I spoke, before I went out there to speak, he asked me, did I have any family members in the Ravenna Cemetery? I said, yes. And he asked me how many. And I said, I can probably name 15 or 16 without even batting an eye. I mean, without stretching the mind, I just know, because I know my family history. My daughter, and so what was happening was years in the late 70s, when I was a college student, I started out going to Muskegon Business College, and I would take classes in the morning. And I got really thrilled by the movie Roots by Alex Haley, and family history, genealogy, research, and all that. So I would take classes at the Muskegon Business College right there downtown Muskegon in the morning. I'd go across the street to the county building before we really had computers, and I would sit on the floor. They'd let me come in the county building office, and I told them I was doing family history research, so I would sit on the floor with a notebook and pouring through all the hard copy records and taking notes. So that's when I realized I had so many of my family members buried in Ravenna. Why were they buried in Ravenna? Because Ravenna was our landing place from Canada. So we go Canada, Ravenna, and then to different, and then of course we spread out throughout Michigan and so on. In fact, my great great uncle Dave Abbott, who ran that hotel at Slocum's Grove, when things were dying out, no, actually not when things were dying out, when things were still going good, he had developed a pump. He called it the Abbott pump, and it was to pump water from a low level area to a higher level area. And I really don't, to this day, don't know all the details of that. Moreland Township, I think that Moreland refers to the marshes. And so anyway, he was involved in something like that. So he took his entire family, I mean, his sons, his daughters, his son, the whole family, sons and their wives, and that whole group moved down to Louisiana, okay, down to Louisiana. And I can't think of the town now. It's on the west side of Louisiana. It'll come to me later. So, but that's why so many of my families in the Ravenna Cemetery is because that was our landing place. Canada, Slocum, Ravenna, Moreland Township, Ravenna, and then off to the other places. So I told Mike Pearson that I had about 16 people that I could probably know. And oh, I'm sorry, I was doing this family history research back in the 70s, and so my wife and I had a daughter that died at birth, and so her name is Tamara Lynn Abbott, and I needed a place to bury her. And I remember reaching out to the secretary of the township there, and I remember her. I was saying, hey, I'm looking for I need a grave for my daughter, and she said, "Oh, Clint, we've been working with you. We know you and your family. You've done this family history research and well documented, and there are plots that your great grandfather has left, and we can just deed those over to you." So, well, I appreciated that, and so I contacted my family, and my dad and his brothers were actually in line before me, but many of them had already taken care of those types of things. And so the long story short was that I got a plot of 6 graves, and my dad and my mom got a plot of 6 graves. And so my daughter's buried there, and of course my dad, a few years later, he passed away. He's there. My mom just recently went home to be with the Lord. She's there, and of course I could go on. My grandfather, my great grandfather, and I can just keep going down the line of who's there. And someday my wife and I will be there. So anyway, that's why Ravenna has a special relationship with me, is because my family. It was our landing place. And I get it. I have no problem. Some people say, I had a funeral home director tell me one time, he thought that you should be buried. This is kind of, who wants to talk about getting buried, right? But he said he thought that you should be buried in the town that you live in. And I don't have any qualms about that. Not a problem. My choice for Ravenna was just simply, it's a connection. It's a connection. It's where we landed from Canada. And if someone after me gets into family history and genealogy, I hope that the efforts that I've done will make their studies and their research easier, because now it's very easy to follow that wherever you're at, if you can trace yourself like to Newaygo or wherever you're at, and then the next step over here is Moreland Township, Ravenna, and from there, before that, it was Point Pelee, Ontario, Canada. And before that, it was Vermont, and then good luck after that, because it's very, very hard to go too far back. But that's why Ravenna has a special relationship to me. It's home over on Ravenna Heights Road, which is like a mile north of Slocum Road, and north of Laketon, north of where the high school is now. On the east side, there is a house there that my great aunt Lucinda lived in. She married Lucinda Abbott. She married a man by the name of Orange Conklin. A lot of Conklins in the area. And she married Orange Conklin, and they lived there. And that house is, what do you call it, Centennial House. And so it's been there for a long time. It's still there. It's just a little bit north of the high school on the east side of Ravenna Heights Road. So Ravenna has a special relationship to me because that's where my family landed. I'll be there sometime. I still go over there frequently. Actually, I go over there frequently, as I say, to visit the folks. To visit the folks. So that's why Ravenna has a special place in my heart. And I hope that's helpful. And you learned, and you picked up a little history along the way about that. You might want to check out the Ravenna Historical Society, Shannon Place. They did a piece. They did a history of the area. And I remember Shannon had asked me to write a piece. I'd written a book. In fact, if you're interested, it's called The Abbott Family History by Clint Abbott. You can get it on Amazon.com or maybe Barnes and Noble. I know for sure Amazon you can get it on. And a section of that book was reproduced. And, we forwarded it over to Shannon and to the Historical Society, and that was put in this book that they published on the history of Ravenna and I think Moreland Township. So there you go. That's my history. And I hope I haven't bored you too much, but I hope maybe informed you. And thanks for taking time. Oh, by the way, if you like it, please subscribe. I put out other interesting, or I hope interesting, content as well. So like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Have a great day.